Are you a deep fake? Oh, good. We got one. You can go. Everyone else stay. No. You know what I mean by deep fake? It's a new term that talks about an image that seems to be one thing, but has been doctored, has been AI'd, has been transformed. It all started back with Photoshop, right? You'd see a picture of someone standing with Abraham Lincoln, and you say, oh, that's Photoshopped. And then it grew to this thing of filters. We just saw a bunch of filters, and staff had way too much fun. You would not believe all the things we can't show you that happened during that particular episode. But it's this idea that we put something over ourselves and we appear different. And it's got kind of a weird side because it's become actually common for young people, particularly young girls, to change their appearance in little ways, make their eyes bigger and brighter, and their body shape changes, and their skin changes, and they just create this image of how they want to seem, how they want to appear. And now this thing of deep fakes has actually become a very real thing, because with the advent of AI, artificial intelligence, you have computers that can create images of people who don't even exist, and can change images of people who do, and can make pictures that it's impossible, close to impossible, to determine whether or not that picture is real or not. So what's that going to mean in a court of law when someone says, here's a picture, and someone else says, that's a deep fake? Or that's not true, that's not real. And so we live in this age where it's getting really hard to trust our own eyes, to really figure out what is real and who we are. It's because we are drowning, and have been for a long time, in a culture that is addicted to image and not reality. We are addicted to appearing to be something when actually we are something else. And what is worse, it's gotten so deep, we've worked so hard to appear a certain way, we don't even know who we are, or what we think, or what we do. Now, the thing that's amazing about this whole conversation, I didn't even talk about bots yet. By the way, if you Google deep fakes, understand it came from a dark place. It primarily was an issue used in pornography in a terrible way, so be careful if you search it. But it's a terrible way of misrepresenting truth. So the good news is, the amazing news, the thing that should blow our mind, is that this is actually something Jesus taught about 2,000 years ago. The answer to this dilemma of the age that we are living in was about image management, is something that Jesus spoke about, warned about long ago, when Jesus taught about a term that we all are aware of, and we apply to other people. We hate it being applied to ourselves. The term hypocrite. To seem to be one thing and to actually be living a way that is completely inconsistent with what we actually are. I actually want to suggest to you that the greatest danger to Christianity is not some kind of atheistic movement, some kind of modern philosophical movement. It's not immorality. The greatest danger to Christianity are people who profess to believe in Jesus Christ, who live hypocritical lives. That seemed to be what Jesus was most concerned about. He saved his harshest rebukes, his most dire warnings for folks who were invested in seeming but not being. You know, he said to his disciples a double warning. He says, be on guard and be aware against the yeast of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the religious leaders who were defined by hypocrisy. He said, be super careful, because it's like yeast. Yeast is that organism that we put in bread, and it touches one part and it spreads through the whole thing. He's warning that this thing of hypocrisy, of image-driven living, will spread to every corner of your life, and you will lose relationships, you will lose your walk with God, you will lose your very self, to the point where you won't even know who you are anymore. So, we've been in, and we're continuing to be in this thing of the Sermon on the Mount, where today we're going to be talking about deep fakes and filters, images we use to hide ourselves or misrepresent ourselves, and it begins. Here's the thing about hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is a form of insanity, because it encourages us to live outside of reality rather than dealing with reality. It's based on a lie, and a lie is a form of insanity. It's saying it's better to misrepresent reality and delude myself. And here's the thing about hypocrisy. Hypocrisy has to begin with you lying to yourself and foolishly thinking you can lie to God. And here's the other thing you just need to know, and you know it about others, know it about yourself, you're not fooling anybody. You're not fooling anybody. So let's have a deep conversation about deep fakes and filters. This is all part of the Sermon on the Mount. We've been saying the Sermon on the Mount is a united collection of Jesus' relational wisdom. Hypocrisy is toxic to relationship with yourself, with people, and with God, which is the standard for how Christians should live. What we're going to see again, relational wisdom for Jesus is not about what we say, is not about a position we stand, is not about virtue signaling. He's not saying, I'm for all the right things, therefore I'm better for you who are not for the same things I'm at. But wisdom is not what we say or we declare or what we appear. Wisdom is what we do, how we treat people, how we act. This is the fundamental Christian understanding of what is called righteousness. Righteousness is what we say, it's what we do. And we are called to righteousness. And righteousness is the best way to live. This is the standard for how Christians should live and interact with each other. It is a guide to the best way to live, the smart way to live, the intelligent way to live, the meaningful way to live, the way where you are the best you can be. It aligns you with reality rather than deludes you into thinking you shape your own reality, which is nonsense. We're actually going to talk about that in the fall. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. We're already in the fall. Summer was lovely, by the way. Anyway, so a call to be better. So this is the verse we're going to be looking at. Now, this is a super important verse, a verse many people hate because it just is like, oh, just this? Okay, right? And so this is a transitional verse. So you remember, we in the first part of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said, here's a blessed life, the Beatitudes. The world is waiting to see salt and light, people who really live by my standard. This is the fulfillment of the law, where it works, where it's no longer on cold stone, it's being written on your heart. And here's what I'm talking about how you love each other and a commitment to honesty and loving those who hate you and blessing and turning the other cheeks. That is the way to live. Well, what happens in this verse is this is a transitional verse where he's saying, listen, as you are working and striving to live out this teaching that I've given you, I want to let you know about some dangers. And this next series about filter is a series of dangers that will be toxic to your soul, that will actually drive people out of your life and will drive God out of your life. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is that most of them are fairly religious. They are spiritual practices, listen now, that a righteous person will do. But a hypocritical person will do them in such a way that they will absolutely destroy your soul. It would actually be better for you not to do them as a hypocrite than to and fake it, than not do it. And so you should be doing them, and we're going to see this in just a minute. Now look what Jesus says here. He says, you therefore, so the therefore connects with what has come before, and it's going to inform what's coming. This is a transitional verse. This is a turning point in the Sermon on the Mount. This is a connective verse. Remember, Sermon on the Mount, united unity of the way we're supposed to live. He says, you therefore, look at this, be perfect. Oh, just that. Okay. Well, what's perfect? As your heavenly Father is perfect. Okay, all right, just that, okay. Just next verse. We look at this and we say, man, this just doesn't make sense. And this is why. It's because we are Western people and children of this philosopher named Aristotle, who would have defined perfect in the Greek model as living without mistake. Okay? So the standard of Jesus is just living without mistake. Okay, this is why I think many great theologians, including people like Martin Luther, misinterpreted the Sermon on the Mount as a passage of Scripture that's just designed to make us feel so bad that we read the Apostle Paul and we accept Jesus. This is not what's going on here. What's going on here is a Hebraic understanding of what it means to be perfect. Remember, all of the Sermon on the Mount is what's called wisdom literature. It's about principles of truth that are designed to inform how we're supposed to live. So what does it mean to be perfect? What it means to be perfect in Jesus' understanding is to live in balance. It's to live in harmony. It's to be authentic. And so this is the essence of the word perfect here in the language and in the understanding of the Hebraic mindset. It's that the outer life matches the inner life. It is the opposite of what they call cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is, I'm thinking this, but I'm trying to live this, and it's like a car out of tune. It just shakes. It's a horrible way to live. Hypocrisy is exhausting. It's degrading. It robs your humanity. And the call to be perfect is to say, listen, what you say, what you stand for, what you signal as virtuous, that should inform how you live. And when it doesn't, you are imperfect. You are out of balance. You are, the word for sin, missing the mark. And he says this is a terrible way to live. And so this is not a call to live without mistake. This is a call to be a person of integrity, to be a person of authenticity, to be a person who is ever striving to do the things we say, to live the way we live, to live up to our ideals. Okay, so this is the transitional verse, and then he's going to go. I'm going to tell you where we're going to be the next couple weeks. He then goes to 5 spiritual issues that if we get messed up on these, we're just going to get messed up. We're going to be spiritually, emotionally, relationally unhealthy people. So let me show you these just quickly. 5 sicknesses of the soul. What we're going to look at today, hypocrisy, okay? Second one, materialism. When stuff matters more than God and people. We're going to talk about anxiety. Jesus talked about anxiety before it was cool to talk about anxiety. So we're going to talk about what really is causing our anxiety in this current age and how Jesus speaks to it. God just met me on this one, guys. I can't wait to get to this one, okay? Verse 4, condemnation. That's the most known verse in the entire Bible. When you ask people, particularly non-church people, what verse in the Bible do you know? They know Matthew 7:1, and we're going to unpack that. It has to do with judgment and being judgmental, okay? The 5th one is apathy. When we lose the ability to ask, seek, and knock, okay? So we're going to unpack these, and we're going to find cure. So spoiler alert, here's what we're going to learn, all right? We're going to learn that anonymity cures hypocrisy. I'm going to unpack that today. We're going to learn that meaning cures materialism. We're going to learn that goodness cures anxiety, and I can't wait to show you. God just met me on this, I tell you. Discernment cures condemnation, and we're going to see that curiosity cures apathy, okay? So this is me again. I'm going to repeat myself so many times over the next 5 weeks, okay? Because I find I talk really fast, and y'all don't listen as well as you should. So I'm going to have to be real repetitive, all right? Just so you know. All right, let's do some work today on this issue of hypocrisy. Anonymity cures hypocrisy. Now, before we begin, I just need to start by just being, gut leveling honesty and just confess I'm a hypocrite. Okay, so let's just make this official. Hi, my name is Paul. I'm a hypocrite. That's exactly right. That's the thing. And so here's the deal. A hypocrite is a person who simply doesn't live up to all their ideals. Let me just ask a question. Any other hypocrites here today? Yeah, right? So you're in the right place. Church is for hypocrites. And so when all the critics of the church say the church is full of hypocrites, I say, absolutely, room for one more, come on by. We got plenty of seats for you. We'll make room for you, okay? Because here's the deal. All of us are striving to become what we have ideals. And certainly hypocrisy is rank within the church. And it smells worse in the church. When you claim you're representing God and standing for God and doing the things of God, and you're just not. When you're the preacher who is after money and women or whatever else your thing, that just is one of those deals where you go, why? That is the opposite of salt and light. That draws no one. It drives people away. That's why I say hypocrisy is actually the greatest danger to the well-being of the church. You want to drive kids away from church? Let's just double down on hypocrisy, because they just don't, they'll call us out. They'll say it. This just doesn't make sense, okay? But here's the problem. The problem is that we all are in this thing of hypocrisy. How are we supposed to deal with it? Now, the first thing I just want to say about hypocrisy is that the church did not invent hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is a human problem, not just a church problem. We could just start in on all those terrible people out there who stand for things that they claim they stand for that they don't. So we could talk about folks, I care deeply and you should care deeply for the environment, but I never met a plastic bottle I didn't like. Okay, I drive a big car, I fly in planes, even though maybe I say I shouldn't, all these kinds of things like this. But I got this thing where I put this thing on Facebook for Earth Day. Don't you understand? I stand. You know what this is called? And this is epidemic. And listen, it's killing our culture right now. It's root hypocrisy that Jesus warned about a long time. It's virtue signaling. So virtue signaling is, look, I've posted, I've said, I got the bumper sticker, I voted a certain way. I stand for the right stuff. I have the right virtues. And you know what? You don't. You stand for the wrong stuff because you don't stand for my stuff. And this does two things. And guess, listen, church, we were doing this before it was cool. I mean, we have written the book on this, so just pause until we get to a couple weeks on the Sermon on Judgment, which will also kill your soul. But understand, just all of us, we are in this, it's a human condition. So virtue signaling, what does it do? It fills us with self-righteousness. In an unearned self-righteousness, that I am righteous. Why? Well, because of what I think, because of what I said, because of what I stand for. Jesus would say, yeah, but what did you do? What did you do about it? You say you are deeply concerned about the poor. Do you know one poor person? You say you care about racism in this country because you put a quote by Dr. Martin Luther King on your Facebook page during Black History Month. But you have never read letters from a Birmingham jail. You have never talked to a person of color who's been marginalized. And so you say the right things, and that makes you feel like this myth that I'm a good person, I'm okay, and I'm good enough, right? You know, I'm good enough for God and all these kinds of things, rather than dealing in reality. That simply because saying I'm for something, so it fills us with self-righteous, and it gives us this other incredible, it's a springboard to one of the other toxic issues we're going to see that Jesus warns about, this thing of judgment. That it gives me permission to look down on you because you haven't posted, you haven't said, you haven't done as much as I've said. And so this temptation of the soul to appear to be something, but not. So the cure Jesus is going to give us is anonymity. So this is a Latin term, es quam veride. It means to be rather than to seem. This is all the way back to Jesus. That for Jesus, it's not to seem, it's not to put a filter literally or spiritually or figuratively or metaphorically to kind of look good, to try to fool yourself and others in God when inside you just know. Jesus said this about the Pharisees. He said, you guys are whitewashed tombs. You're like a coffin. He says, outside it's so beautiful and wonderful, but inside it's full of rotting dead things. He says, that's not going to get better if you keep putting the emphasis on appearing rather than on being. What you actually are as defined by righteous behaviors, righteous thoughts, righteous responses, righteous actions towards people, towards the least of these. When we align what we say with what we do, we start to become perfect, balanced, in harmony. We start seeing anxiety and dissonance go out of our life. We are able to be more honest with ourselves and others. We start to become a wise person, a good person from whom good things naturally flows. But when we're living in the dissonance and we don't acknowledge it, man, it's a mess. Now again, all of us are fighting this battle. I mean, it's not the question of you are a hypocrite or not, it's just how much today. And what are you supposed to do when the hypocrisy is there, okay? And again, I hope you're beginning to see how all of the Sermon on the Mount is interrelated, because this goes back to the passage we looked on even a couple weeks ago, that you start with the log in your own eye. So easy to see hypocrisy in other people. So easy. It's just as easy for other people to see it in you, by the way. The challenge is for us to see it in ourselves, root it out, and address it, okay? So what Jesus does is he gives some examples to show. And at the heart of this is a return to three words: humility, okay? Honesty, and anonymity, okay? Humility, honesty, and anonymity. So he gives us three illustrations. So once again, you have Jesus talking about something where really he's talking about something else by talking about that thing. You know what I mean? So you say, why did Jesus, why didn't he just come out and say it? Actually, the Apostle Paul very often Apostle Paul's the kind of guy who says, don't be hypocritical. Next point. Jesus understands that we're a lot more wicked than that. We need to be snuck up on. We need to be knocked off our certainty. We need to be given a parable or a teaching or a twist or a turn to get us to slow down and think and do the deep work that inner life requires to just do an inventory of our souls, okay? So he has us 3 examples. Now you're going to notice that all 3 of these examples are righteous things that he assumes his followers are going to do. And so if you do them in the way that is the way you're intended, not only will you bless others, you will be blessed more than you could ever imagine. But if you do it for appearances, if you do it to seem rather than to be, it is toxic to your soul. It will drive God out of your life. It will drive people out of your life. It'll make it so you don't even know who you are. Okay? So this is going to require for just some honesty, humility, and anonymity. So let's take a look, okay? First one is when you give. How you give matters, okay? Now the assumption is you will give to the poor, specifically in this illustration, okay? But if you give to see, you're gonna lose everything, okay? Watch this. When you pray, okay? His people are supposed to pray, but oh man, it's amazing how many times when Jesus is teaching about prayer, he's teaching about what not to do. And there's all kinds of verses in the scriptures that explain why our prayers are not answered, okay? Things like we're going to use them for ourselves, we're doing it just for show, we're praying for ourselves, but we're indifferent to other people who are in need. So there's a way to pray that is bad for you spiritually. So this is the wisdom of Jesus. Way, way more here than you ever thought in the Sermon on the Mount, right? And then the third, when you fast, okay? The assumption is that followers of Jesus are going to learn the spiritual practice of denying themselves, of delaying gratification. And fasting, it's amazing that modern Christians don't even think about fasting. Ancient Christians, like particularly for the first 300 years, they were all about it. They recognized the relationship between the body, the spirit, the mind, and the soul. And they recognized you needed time to recenter, recalibrate. And I'm starting to preach on fasting. I haven't got time. Stop. All right, we're going to move. All right. So here's what he says about these 3 examples. Keep it secret, shut the door, and wash your face. Okay? And all of these are really illustrating the same point. Keep it between you and God. That if you recognize you've got an image problem, not that you look bad, but you are just so caught up in how you look and what people think and what you appear, that you really deeply, on a deep level, don't care if you're doing the right thing as long as it looks like you're doing the right thing. Then you are driving goodness out of your life. You are driving God out of your life. And he says, if this is your case, you need to do some spiritual things where you keep it secret, shut the door, wash your face. Now, once again, church, this is proverbial wisdom. And we got to go back to that again, whole Sermon on the Mount integrated. Got to go back to what Jesus taught about the law, okay? Because what some people are going to want to say is, okay, well, I guess this is the new rule about giving. And so if we just need to find out what the rules are and do that. And what we don't realize is that, this is going to hurt some of you, rule following is an image issue. That your image is, I follow the rules, I do what's right. No one can say I don't do what's right. This is what I see. And so just give me the new rules. If you don't move this conversation to the heart, then you're going to technically follow the rule of not letting anybody know and praying, never praying in public and fasting as a legalistic, horrible thing, and you're going to totally miss the application of the heart. So this is what Jesus says. He says this, thus when you give, so notice the assumption, Christians, when you give, and again, the action is the wisdom. The action is the righteousness. Okay? Posting, standing for, feeling good about it, thinking wealthier people than me should do this. I know none of you would do that. I'm sure there's some terrible people there who did that. But, the idea that more people should give, government should give, other people should give, but, you don't understand. And we wouldn't say, so I believe in giving, I believe in other people giving specifically. I actually could do some receiving. Someone's got to receive. Anyway, all right, so thus when you give, look at this, to the needy, sound no trumpets before you give. Look what I have done. And he's using hyperbole here. But this can be just a subtle little thing. This could be just a little, attention thing. This could be just dropping it at the right time, in the right way, and the right person. And notice, listen, when you do something good, there's a point of biblical and psychological wisdom here. The person you really want to know about it is a person you very well may have an image problem with. That you just care about their opinion too much. And you don't care about God's. I really want this person to know. I really want this person to know. This person to just see what I've done, okay? And that's an opportunity for you to take a step back and ask yourself, why is that so important to me? Okay, so when you give, sound no trumpets before you, as the hypocrites do. Now, we're going to talk about this more in a couple weeks, but you know what the word hypocrite literally means in the Greek? It means to wear a mask. It's actually a term from theater during that day, where people, during the plays, everybody on the stage wore a mask. There were only male players, so even if you're a female character, you wore a mask. And the idea was this, that the Greeks had such a conviction about integrity that they would never want to seem, even when they were acting, like they were something they were not. And so by putting on this mask, they're saying, this is not me, this is the character. And so that word became a word of warning. Do not live in such a way that you are putting on a mask, you are wearing a filter, you are becoming a deep fake. You are seeming but not being. It's a powerful, powerful metaphor. It's just full of meaning. And so he says, don't do this as the phony people, as the people who are inauthentic, the people who delight to be seen rather than to be. We're going to look at this in a couple weeks, but Jesus has a whole chapter in a couple of the Gospels called the woes of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And at the heart of this is the desire to seem a certain way to people by being indifferent to how we seem and how we are to God. Okay? And it becomes so creepy, so ugly. And it doesn't have to be religious to be yucky. There are secular people who would never consider themselves Christians who are stunningly hypocritical. Okay? So it's so easy to judge other people's hypocrisy. All right, trumpets before you, don't do that, as the hypocrites do in the synagogue. So they do it at church and in the streets. So it turns up in the marketplace, business community, companies who are virtually signaling right now, look, we stand for the right stuff because we believe in the right stuff. No. We stand for the right stuff, so you'll buy our stuff. Because it's still about money. But we stand for the right stuff, so buy from us. Okay? It's amazing how many companies have just taken some of these crazy stands on virtue signaling, endorsing things that are fundamentally broken and immoral and are going to hurt people. And then if you really listen to the CEOs, particularly when they're talking to their shareholders, they're saying, well, we're just opening up our brand to new markets. How is that not hypocrisy? You see? So church, this is our problem. But we inherit it from the human family, okay? So just understand it's everywhere. Do in the synagogues and in the streets, as they may be praised by other people. That's what I want. I want people to say, you're so cool, so virtuous, so awesome, you look so good. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward, so unrewarding, so unfulfilling. By the way, the reward that comes from God, watch this. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, okay? So anonymity. He says, do it quietly, do it humbly. And this is particularly true if you've got an image deal. Don't let anybody know. Give the anonymous note, the anonymous gift. Do the thing where no one sees. Go in a place where no one's going to recognize you and do the thing you ought to do. Do the thing at work without getting credit or without getting paid or because it's the right thing to do. Show compassion, because it's the right thing to do. And again, if you've got an image problem, this is a spiritual practice for you. Quietly doing good. And some of you go, well, where's the fun in that? If you're just honest, because that's why you do good things, okay? He says, you got your reward. It's not very satisfying. It's like a drug. The more you get, the more you want. This is why a truly narcissistic person's driving force, such a broken thing, is to be seen. is to be seen. See me and see me again and make it about me. It's all about me. That's why I say this issue of hypocrisy, this issue of wearing filters, it's a mental health issue. It's an issue of insanity. It's an issue that will drive God and people out of your life. Jesus is not just giving us warm sentiments in the Sermon on the Mount. He is giving us principles that if we do not live by them, we will become something horrible and broken. And so there's a desperate need to get back to this. So he goes on. He says this. He says, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is saying, verse 3, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in you will reward you. So what will the reward be from God? We think, oh, rewards in heaven someday. And a lot of us aren't real excited about that. And another sermon another day, why that's such an amazing, cool thing. We're going to talk about it in the Sermon on the Mount, things you can't lose, things that thieves can't steal, can't be stolen from you. You know, doesn't rot, doesn't wear out. Is always satisfying and never gets old. Those are the rewards of God. But the two big rewards of God is what you become when you live by his standard. You become something beautiful and powerful and something that brings honor and glory to God, something meaningful. And the other reward is God himself, that you will be a true son and daughter of God. That is the reward. Now, usually that doesn't feel great right away, but the stuff we do that feels great right away, it's just not enough and we need more. But the stuff that we do for God, it grows in understanding, meaning, and significance. It changes who we are. This is the wisdom of Jesus. So this first example. Second example, he says this. He says, and when you pray, notice the assumption of prayer, that the righteous action will take place, but how you do it, you must not be like the hypocrites, the ones who wear a mask. For they love to stand and pray in the synagogue and the street corners, that they may be seen by others. You know, Jesus told a story about this one religious leader. He told the story in exaggeration. I'm sure everybody in the room was just going, yes, that is it. He said, two men went up to the temple. The first one was a religious dude. Other one, horrible sinner dude. The religious guy said, thank you, God, that I am not a sinner like this man. And he said it with a loud voice and with lifted hands and the best seat in the house. And he said the sinful man, he couldn't even lift his head to heaven. And it was a cry for mercy and brokenness. And Jesus just asked the obvious question. He said, which one left right or righteous with God? He didn't even answer the question because it was so obvious. It was like a mic drop moment for Jesus. He had a lot of those where everybody said, yeah, we've seen that 1,000 times. And it's gross. It's gross. And so he said, when you pray, don't be like that. He says, truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room, shut the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees you in secret. I don't know, I've been around a lot of people who prayed in the last 35 years as a pastor. Have you ever been praying with someone and you felt like they were talking to you and not to God? I've done that. Oh, Lord, I know this person needs to know this, this, and this. So will you teach them this, this, and correct them in this way and that way and help them understand this way? One of the things I do, particularly when I'm praying in a group, is I try to catch my breath. And I try to be aware of the people here because we're praying together and the things that we're concerned about. But I rest my focus, my attention away, and I consciously think of turning to God and addressing God. See, so some people say, well, this just means you should never pray in public. I know a pastor, he wouldn't ever pray with other people. So the Bible says don't pray with other people. Just trading a new rule, okay? He was very proud, by the way. Let everybody know he wouldn't pray with other people, that his prayers were better. Just anyway, this is the whole thing. We are just sneaky wicked, aren't we? Sneaky wicked. We find ways to justify it. So what he says is make your affection for God. Prayer is the pursuit of God. It is just the ultimate, for me, the ultimate expression of prayer is just being with God, being so comfortable with him that I'm aware of him that I don't even need words because words can muck it up, that I can share and ask him for the deepest longings of my heart because now I'm aware of the deepest longings in my heart because I'm with him, that I can be totally spiritually transparent, nude, and vulnerable before God because he's my Father. When prayer is that, it is life-giving. But when it's this, it's gross, it's terrible, it'll drive God. God says, I'm not doing that. Gross, you're using me. You're using me, gross, okay? Then he goes and says, when you fast, notice the assumption of fasting. Somebody said, I didn't even know that was a thing. Well, do a study. Okay, it's a thing. It's such a life-giving thing. If you haven't discovered the joy of fasting, you say, whoa, joy, anyway, another sermon of the day. Do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces that their fasting may be seen by others. I said, I had a friend in college. How you doing? I'm okay, I'm fasting today. Oh, I'm not. I'm going to the cafeteria. You're better than I am. And I used to think that I should be doing more. And it's full, don't you feel it's full of judgment and comparison and virtue signaling and shaming and all that kind of stuff. He says this, don't do that. He says, when you do that, man, you just figure yourself, you make a show of it, you make some spiritual, and this can be any spiritual practice. This can be any political practice. This can be any business practice. That you do it to be seen, okay? This is why these passages are about things that are really about another thing, even as it talks about the thing. And so this really isn't a passage about fasting, prayer, and giving, although it teaches us about them and there's truth about those topics. These are three topics about something much more fundamental of the heart. He says, truly I say they have received their reward, but when you fast, anoint your head, wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees you in secret will be rewarded. There's another version. It's the opposite of virtue signaling. It's pain signaling. That my pain, my trauma, my grief is worse than yours. And I'm going to let it define me, and I'm just going to wear it, okay? And it's just important for you to see me all the time. And again, listen, we just did a whole series on lamenting and the importance of lamenting and being honest with your feelings and all those kinds of things, finding community to discover that. But there is a tipping point where that can go, where you are defined by grief rather than Jesus, and he hasn't redeemed it. And so that's a whole other sermon, another day. But all of this, see how sneaky it is? See how insidious it is? And why this is not something I learned the new rule, got it. This requires us to slow down, open our Bibles, open a devotion and say, okay, where's hypocrisy hiding in my life? Where's the thing that I need to bring out into the light? Because you know what? I need to do something with it. Where's the place I need to discover honesty, humility, and anonymity? Where I can make it between me and God. I can drag it into life. And please don't do this in such a way that you just shame yourself and beat yourself up. At the end of this, you should feel free, not ashamed. Okay? So we got devotions this week all about this. So it'd be great for you to get it on the app. It'd be great for you to pick one up. It'd be great for you to do it online and on the website. For you to say, you know what, I haven't thought about this at all. I've thought about other people's hypocrisy a lot. It really makes me mad. It's gross. I actually get a real sense of power and excitement pointing it out in people. That's a wake-up call, right? And so to return to that righteousness of Jesus, man, it's going to take some work. So let's pray. Father, I thank you so much that you are perfect. That who you say you are. Who you reveal yourself to be, you are. And you are a loving Father. You are the sacrificial, serving King Jesus. We want to be like you. And so teach us to have hearts that don't want to be seen, but we want to be. A heart that is not all about, image and performance and appearance and virtue signaling, but a heart instead that is about a God. And the amazing thing is, what we will be when we become like Jesus, people will notice us. People will see us. We will become rare and beautiful. We will have found the pearl of great price. And Jesus, I just pray that would be our heart. Give us courage to do this work. Give us joy in being set free, being authentic whole people. In Jesus' name, amen.